November 9 by Collen Hoover. Fallon. I wonder what kind of sound it would make if I were to smash this glass against the side of his head. It's a thick glass. His head is hard. The potential for a nice big thud is there. I wonder if he would bleed. There are napkins on the table, but not the good kind that could soak up a lot of blood. So yeah, I'm a little shocked, but it's happening, he says. His voice causes my grip to tighten around the glass in hopes that it stays in my hand and does not actually end up against the side of his skull. Fallon, he clears his throat and tries to soften his words, but they still come at me like knives. Are you going to say something? I stab the hollow part of an ice cube with my straw, imagining that it's his head. What am I supposed to say? I mumble, resembling a bratty child rather than the 18-year-old adult that I am. Do you want me to congratulate you? My back meets the boot behind me and I fold my arms across my chest. I look at him and wonder if the regret I see in his eyes is a result of disappointing me or if he is simply acting again. It's only been 5 minutes since he sat down and he has already turned his side of the boot into his stays, and once again I'm forced to be his audience. His fingers drum the sides of his coffee cup as he watches me silently for several beats. Tap, 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 tap. He thinks I'll eventually give in and tell him what he wants to hear, but he hasn't been around me enough in the last 2 years to know that I'm not that girl anymore. When I refuse to acknowledge his performance, he eventually sighs and drops his elbow to the table. Well, I thought you'd be happy for me. I force a quick shake of it. Happy for you? He can't be serious. He shrugs and a small smile takes over his already irritating expression. I didn't know I had it in me to become a father again. A loud burst of disbelieving laughter escapes my mouth. Releasing sperm into the vagina of a 24-year-old does not a father make, I say, somewhat bitterly. His smug smile disappears and he leans back and cocks his head to the side. The head cock was always his go-to move when he wasn't sure how to react on screen. Just look like you are contemplating something deep and it will pass for almost any emotion. Sad, introspective, apologetic, sympathetic. He must not recall that he was my acting coach for most of my life, and this look was one of the first he taught me. You don't know I have the right to call myself a father? He sounds offended by my response. What does that make me to you then? I treat his question as rhetorical and stab at another point of ice. I skillfully slip it up my straw and then slide the piece of ice into my mouth. I bite it loud, uncaring crunch. Surely he doesn't expect me to answer that question. He hasn't been a father since the night my acting career came to a standstill when I was just 16. And if I'm being honest with myself, I'm not even sure he was much of a father before that night earlier. We were more like acting coach and student. One of his hands finds its way through the expensive implanted follicles of hair that lined his forehead. Why are you doing this? He becoming increasingly annoyed with my attitude by the second. Are you still pissed that I don't show up for your graduation? I already told you I had a scheduling conflict. No, I reply evenly. I didn't invite you to my graduation. He pulls back, looking at me incredulously. Why not? I only had 4 tickets and, he says, I'm your father. Why the hell wouldn't you invite me to your high school graduation? You wouldn't have come. You don't know that, he fires back. You didn't come. He rolls his eyes. Well, of course I didn't, Fallon. I wasn't invited. I sigh heavily. You are impossible. Now I understand why mom left you. He gives his head a slight shake. Your mom left me because I slept with her best friend. My personality had nothing to do with it. I didn't even know what to say to that. The man has absolutely zero remorse. I both hate and envy it. In a way, I wish I were more like him and less like my mother. He's obviously to his many flaws, whereas mine are the focal point of my life. My flaws are what wake me up in the morning and what kept me awake every night. Who had the salmon? The waiter asks. Impeccable timing. I lift my hand and he sets my plate in front of me. I don't even have an appetite anymore, so I scoot the rice around with my fork. Hey, wait a second. I look up at the waiter, but he isn't and staring straight at me. My first thought when I see him is, if only this were 2 years ago. I think that a lot when I come across guys I could possibly be attracted to. And this guy is definitely cute, not in a typical Hollywood way. Much like most of the guys who inhabit the city, those guys all look the same, as if there's a perfect mold for a successful actor and they are all trying to fit it. This guy is the complete opposite. His 5 o'clock shadow isn't a symmetrical, purposeful work of art. Instead, his stop. Once I'm finished using the restroom, I take at least a full minute to wash my hand. I stare down at them the entire time, refusing to look in the mirror, avoiding my reflection becoming easier by the day, but I still catch a glimpse of myself while reaching for a paper towel. No matter how many times I've looked in the mirror, I still haven't grown used to what I see. I bring my left hand up and touch the scars that run across the left side of my face, over my jaw and down my neck. They disappear beneath the collar of my shirt, but beneath my clothing, the scars run down the entire left side of my torso. Stopping just below my waistline, I run my fingers over the areas of skin and now resemble puckered leather, scars that constantly remind me that the fire was real and not just a nightmare I can force myself awake from with a pinch on the arm. I was bandaged up for months after the fire, unable to touch most of my body. Now that the burns are healed and I'm left with the scars, I catch myself touching them obsessively. The scars feel obsessively. The scars feel like stretched velvet, and it would be normal to be as revolted by their feel as I am by their appearance. But instead, I actually like the way they feel. I'm actually absentmindedly running my fingers up and down my neck or arm, reading the braille on my skin until I realize what I'm doing and stop. I shouldn't like any aspect of the one thing that ripped my life out from under me. If it is simply the way it feels beneath my fingertips, the way it looks is something else, like each of my flaws has been blanketed in pink highlights put on display for the entire world to see. No matter how hard I try to hide them with my hair and clothes, they are there. They will always be there, a permanent reminder of the night that destroyed all the best parts of me. I'm not one to really focus on dates or anniversaries, but when I woke up this morning, today's date was the first thought that popped into my head, probably because it was the last thought I had before falling asleep last night. It's been 2 years to the day since my father's home was engulfed by the fire that almost claimed my life. Maybe that's why I wanted to see my father today. Maybe I hoped he would remember, say something to comfort me. I know he's apologized enough, but how much can I actually forgive him for forgetting about me? I only stayed at his house once a week on average, but I had texted him that morning to let him know I would be staying the night, so no one would think that when my father accidentally catches his own house on fire, he would come rescue me from my sleep. But not only did that not happen, he forgot I was there. No one knew anyone was in the house until they heard me scream from the second floor. I know he holds a lot of guilt for that. He apologized every time he saw me for weeks, but the apologies became as scarce as his visits and phone calls. The resentment I hold is still very much there, even though I wish it wasn't. The fire was an accident. I survived. Those are the two things I try to focus on, but it's hard when I think about it every time I look at myself. I think about it every time someone else looks at me. The bathroom doors swings open and a woman walks in, glances at me, then quickly looks away as she heads towards the last stall. Should have picked the first one, lady. I looked myself over one more time in the mirror. I used to wear my hair above the shoulder with edgy bangs, but it's grown a lot in the last couple of years. And not without reason. I brush my fingers through the long, dark strands of hair that I have trained to cover most of the left side of my face. I pull the sleeves of my left arm down to my wrist and then pull the collar up to cover most my neck. The scars are barely visible like this, and I can actually stomach looking at myself in the mirror. I used to think I was pretty, but hair and clothes can only cover up so much now. I hear a toilet flush, so I turn quickly and make my way to the door before the woman can exit the stall. I do what I can to avoid people most of the time, and not because I'm afraid they will stare at my scars. I avoid them because they don't stare. The second people notice me, they look away just as fast because they are afraid to appear rude or judgmental. Just once it would be nice if someone looked me in the eyes and held my stare. It's been so long since that's happened. I hate to admit that I miss the attention I used to get, but I do. I exit the bathroom and head back towards the booth, disappointed to still see the back of my father's head. I was hoping he would have had some kind of emergency and been required to leave while I was in the restroom. It's sad. I would rather be greeted by an empty booth than by my own father. The thought almost makes me frown, but I'm suddenly sidetracked by the guy seated in the booth I'm about to walk past. I don't usually notice people, considering they do everything in their power to avoid eye contact with me. However, this guy's eyes are intense, curious, and staring straight at me. My first thought when I see him is, if only this were 2 years ago. I think that a lot when I come across guys I could possibly be attracted to. And this guy is definitely cute, not in a typical Hollywood way. Much like most of the guys who inhabit the city, those guys all look the same, as if there's a perfect mold for a successful actor and they are all trying to fit it. This guy is the complete opposite. His 5 o'clock shadow isn't a symmetrical, purposeful work of art. Instead, his stubble is blotchy and uneven, like he spent the night working late and actually didn't have time to shave. His hair isn't styled with gel to give him the messy, just roll out of bed look. This guy's hair actually is messy. Strands of chocolate hair sweep across his forehead, some of them erratic and wild. It's like he woke up late for an appointment and was too hurried to bother with looking in a mirror. Such an unkempt appearance should be a turn off, but that's what I find so odd. Despite him looking like he does not have one iota of self-absorption, he is one of the most attractive guys I have ever seen, I think. This could just be a side effect of my obsession with cleanliness. Maybe I so desperately long for the kind of carelessness this guy exhibits that I'm mistaking jealousy for fascination. I might also think he's cute simply because he's one of the few people in the last 2 years who does not immediately look away the moment my eyes meet his. I still have to pass his table in order to get to my booth in behind him, and I can't decide if I want to break out in a sprint in order to get his eyes off me, or if I should walk in slow motion so I can soak up the attention. His body shifts as I begin to pass him, and his stare becomes too much all of a sudden, too invasive. I feel my cheeks blush and my skin tingle, so I look down at my feet and allow my hair to fall in front of my face. I even pull a strand of it into my mouth in order to block more of his view. I don't know why his stare is making me uncomfortable, but it is. Just a few moments ago, I was thinking about how much I miss being stared at, but now that it's happening, I just want him to look away. Right before he's out of my peripheral vision, I caught my eyes in his direction and catch a ghost of a smile. He must not have noticed my scars. That's the only reason a guy like him would have smiled at me. Ugh, it annoys me that I even think this way. I used to not be this girl. I used to be confident, but the fire melted away every ounce of my self-esteem. I've tried getting it back, but it's hard to believe someone could ever find me attractive when I can't even look at myself in the mirror. That never gets old, my father says as I slide back into the booth. I glance up at him, almost having forgotten he was here. What never gets old? He waves his fork towards the waiter, who is now standing at the gas register. That, he says, having fans. He shoves a bit of food in his mouth and begins speaking with a mouthful. So what did you want to talk to me about? What makes you think I want to talk to you about something in particular? He gestures over the table. We are having lunch together. You obviously need to tell me something. It's sad that this is what our relationship has come to. Knowing that a simple lunch date has to be more than just a daughter wanting to see her father. I'm moving to New York tomorrow. Well, tonight actually. But my flight isn't until late, and I don't officially land in New York until the 10th. He grabs his napkins and covers a cough. At least I think it's a cough. Surely that news did not make him choke on his food. New York, he sputters, and then he laughs, as if me living in New York is a joke. Stay calm, Fallon. Your father is an asshole. That's old news. What in the world? Why? What's in New York? His questions keep coming as he processes the information. And please, don't tell me you met someone online. My pulse is raging. Can't he at least pretend to support one of my decisions? I want to change of pace. I was thinking about auditioning for Broadway. When I was 7, my father took me to see Cats on Broadway. It was the first time I had ever been to New York, and it was one of the best trips of my life. Up until that moment, he had always pushed me to be an actress, but it wasn't until I saw that live performance that I knew I had to be an actress. I never had the chance to pursue theater because my father dictated each step of my career, and he is more fond of films, but it's been 2 years now since I have done anything with myself. I don't know if I actually have the courage to audition anytime soon, but making the choice to move to New York is one of the most proactive things I have done since the fire. My father takes a drink, and after he sets down his glass, his shoulders drop with a sigh. Fallon, listen, he says. I know you miss acting, but don't you think it's time you pursue other options? I'm so beyond caring and his motives now. I don't even point out the pile of bullshit he just threw at me. My entire life, all he did was push me to follow in his footsteps. After the fire, his encouragement came to a complete halt. I'm not an idiot. I know he thinks I don't have what it takes to be an actress anymore, and part of me knows he's right. Looks are really important in Hollywood, which is precisely why I want to move to New York. If I ever want to act again, theater may be my best hope. I wish he wasn't so transparent. My mother was ecstatic when I told her I want to move. Since graduation and moving in with Amber, I really leave my apartment. Mom was sad to find out I would be moving away from her, but happy to see that I was willing to leave the confines of not only my apartment but the entire state of California. I wish my father could see what a huge step this is for me. What happened with that narrating job, he asks. I'm still with them. Audiobooks are recorded in studios. Studios exist in New York. He rolls his eyes. Unfortunately. What's wrong with audiobooks? He shoots me a look of disbelief. Aside from the fact that narrating audiobooks is considered the cesspool of acting, you can do better, Fallon. Hell, go to college or something. My heart sinks just when I thought he couldn't be more self-absorbed. He stops chewing and looks straight at me when he realizes what he implied. He quickly wipes his mouth with his napkin and points at me. You know that's not what I meant.